and welcome to 90 Days to Paid, a podcast that tells you all about your property success journey and how to get there in 90 days or less. Today we've got the wonderful Ash on board with us. She's a mortgage broker who's nationally recognised, won some amazing awards, and she's locally based right here in Goulburn. So let's find out all about mortgage broking and the importance of it and how you can get some money to ultimately buy the next property on board. So welcome, Ash.
Thank you, Pat, for having me, and thank you, Peter, for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Awesome. So tell me, Ash, a little bit, just really briefly, about you and what it is that you and your company does.
Okay, so I have a boutique mortgage broking business. We're nationally recognised and we service nationally. We do, obviously, thrive in the local area, and we understand rural lending and regional lending because it is different to city lending. There's different requirements for banks. I have a team of 5, so there's a whole back house helping me process your loan application, which is quite helpful. And we look mainly at rural residential lending or just residential lending, and we also do have business and agri loan lending as well if you need that. But obviously today I think more here to pitch about residential lending and how we're here to help you, or if you're looking at buying a rural farm as your owner-occupied property.
Awesome. Before we get into the crux of today's story, I think we need to really, nut out what a mortgage broker is and why they'd come to you instead of going to a bank and doing their mortgage themselves. So I think that's a really fundamental, great question to ask.
So a mortgage broker is basically where you go to find out all of the information that you don't understand. We're accredited with multiple banks, so 75 lenders or 120 lenders, it doesn't matter. We have all this knowledge and all these banks criteria and lending prospects for you, so we can really work out which lender is best for yourself for your financial circumstances. Because really, if you go into a bank, they only have one policy, and what you're trying to obtain might not fit their policy and their requirements. So if you're, say, self-employed or you've only just been in your job for one day, some banks won't lend to you, but others will.
Gotcha.
So the criteria that and the knowledge that we have and the product information that we know helps you attain a house so much quicker and go to the right bank so that you can actually get approved and not be disheartened that you can't buy the property that you really want, because there is so much conflicting information out there that sometimes people get confused. They ring me all the time and they think, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like, we walk through the process. We help you get the information that you need and get you on track so that you feel comfortable to make an offer and to buy a property knowing that you're backed by someone that actually understands what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, awesome. And so this one's to you, Peter. So where does it sort of come in terms of the relationship you have with mortgage brokers, and how do you use that with your skill set as a real estate agent? How do you sort of work together as a team to help, your vendors and people looking?
So every broker is different in some, I guess they all want to achieve the same thing, get their buyer to buy a house. And sometimes the broker will work for the seller as well. But basically where I work for the property and the homeowner, the broker and the solicitor are really there to look after their buyers.
Yeah, so, gotcha.
Ultimately, we're all advocates, but we advocate for different things. So we're kind of like in a playground and we all have to hold hands throughout. And I know the difference firsthand between a good broker and a not so good broker, same as solicitors that we were talking about last week.
Yep.
And that's why I have Ash here to help us help guide our buyers on the YouTube video and podcast, as well as in real life through the journey.
Awesome. So where should we start, Peter? What was the first question we wanted to sort of ask the wonderful Ash while she was here?
The first question I wanted to ask Ash is, I guess the big question, how do you know that you can buy a home?
So that's a really great question, because there's so many different ways to buy a home, and currently there is a lot of different schemes available for first home buyers, and there's currently a lot of wealth transitioning in the country at the moment. But if you, say, have some savings, or you're getting an inheritance, or you've had an asset and you've paid it down, you no longer have the loan, we can help you structure setting up savings. But normally when you have the idea of that you want to buy a house, or you're trying to understand how to buy a house, the best time is to reach out to a broker then, because we can help you get on path really quickly and let you know what's available for you. So when you're ready, generally is not when someone says you're ready. It's when you are personally ready to take the next step, because it is a big commitment buying a house, and you may have different things in your life that you want to achieve. But really, it's about making sure that you're financially ready. And that's the biggest step towards being actually ready to make offers and go house hunting, as we say.
I just have one more question. So I guess first home buyers, a lot of the time, they might not know they're ready. The ones that I meet, they're always chomping at the bit, and sometimes a little bit premature,
Yes.
which doesn't hurt, I'm sure. But a big thing that you do, I've heard you speak about it before, is that you're looking long term to build wealth for people. So what does that look like for mums and dads out there who might have a dream in their head, but they might be sitting on the opportunity to upgrade now? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So a lot of people don't realise that the property growth that they've had over the last 10 years, it's realistically about 6.4% every year in Australia.
Wow.
So if you've bought your house 10, 15 years ago, you've got quite a lot of equity, and you've also paid that loan down as well. And potentially you may have more money in equity, or you may be in a better position than what you thought you were. So this is where I think you have to be a little bit investigative yourself in going, okay, if it's not a yes right now, it'll be okay, in 2 years' time it will be. And that's what us as a broker, we try to do, is help you attain what your dream is and what your goal is. Say if someone came to me and said, I have a house, I've got a $200,000 mortgage, but it's worth $800,000, but financially they're not ready yet because potentially they have dependents and they have school fees or they have uni fees coming out. Well, we can look at how in the next 2 to 3 years that fee might be gone, so that might ease up cash flow, and then we can make a strategy and a plan for them and help them get to that goal. Or they might be ready straight away and they just might not know it, and then we do a valuation on their house and they go, oh, we have the money, we have the financial position, and then that's really exciting for them because they're actually further ahead than what they are, because it's really taboo to talk about money in Australia. So it's something that I find a lot of people don't want to talk about, how much equity they have or how they can leverage and yield and what income they have. But when you speak to a broker, it's private, it's confidential. We have that relationship with you and the best interest for you to make the decision that you want to make. We don't make the decision for you. We help you make the decision, and we help guide you on the track and give you the information that best benefits you.
So there's no time that's too early to call Panache Financial. Is that right?
I would say if you think you're ready or you want to know something, call us, book into my calendar. We're so ready to help you, and we always want to give someone a little bit of a helping hand. Like, I really believe that we don't talk about finance at all, and we don't talk about property, and we kind of just go, we're going to buy a house, but then we don't look at our wealth portfolio and when we're going to retire and how we're going to get there and what we're going to achieve. And that's a really important part of life if you want to be comfortable.
That's true. Yeah.
Awesome, Ash. So I think that sort of leads in, which you've kind of touched upon it already. It's like, how do you know if you're ready to sort of buy a house? Is there any, is there a stage when you exactly know that now's the time to start looking, or what
when
is
you
it?
talk to me, the broker.
Okay.
Generally when you have some savings or you think you're going to have enough savings. But the thing is, like Peter said, the first home buyers, at the moment, if you go buy a $550,000 house, which is an average house in Goulburn, or a $600,000 house, you need about $30,000 with all the schemes and the stamp duty concession. So a lot of them are coming to me and they're actually way ahead than what they thought they were, or they're very close. And that's really helpful because that means that they can actually go out and they're eager to get into the market. So that is very helpful. But I say to people, the earlier you start investing in property, the better you are, and the sooner you can retire when you get older, because you're not paying your mortgage off.
100%. I think that was probably one of the best advice that I had as a young, 20-something-year-old, was to try and get into the property game as quickly as possible, because that's was just enough to set you ahead. And it doesn't have to be your dream home as your very first one that you
Definitely not.
that you go into. It is one that at least you've got some money and some equity into something, and then that is your stepping stone onto your next big thing, and far sooner than you realise once you sort of dip your toe in the water nice and early. But that brings me to a really quick question about, is the Australian dream dead? A lot of people and millennials are saying that, we don't have enough money to buy a house, all that sort of stuff. It's become harder, but it's still obtainable, yeah?
It's very attainable. The reason that I feel that this has become a topic is because everyone has social media, everyone has a lot of platforms, and they see what everybody else has, and they get a bit of FOMO, and then they scared that they're not doing as well as each other, and then they think that they need to have the brand new house, as you said, or they need to have a certain. But if you look at the market and you're actually really smart about it, and you see that, okay, the average Australian moves every 5 to 7 years at the moment, and as I said, the average growth is 6.4%, well, then you realistically are going to be making money, and you won't be living in that house that you don't absolutely love, but it's grown in value. And you're also not paying premiums of rent and going, I'm never going to get into the market. But ultimately, to your question, I think it's just about what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not willing to sacrifice. I see a lot of young people that are really good with their money, and I see a lot of people that aren't great with their money. And I think it comes down to your money value and your life value and what your needs and wants are. If someone's going out every weekend or on sports bet a lot, that's generally what they value, and that makes them happy, but generally it's not going to lead to good savings and good proposition to be buying a house. And then if you see there's young people out there working 2 jobs, and that's obviously they're saving. But then there's also the double-edged sword with university as well, because you're studying, you're trying to pay your HECS debt off as well, and that's something that I feel is quite talked about at the moment, is that HECS debts are actually getting charged at a KPI interest, and that means that they're indexed. So you actually have to pay your HECS off now. It's not free to study. And like 20, 30 years ago, people weren't incurring these HECS debts like they have been. And then the HECS actually reduces your borrowing capacity when you go out and get the full-time job as a nurse, and you're earning $80,000 a year, but you actually have to pay $600 a month out of that salary back to your HECS debt. So then that reduces your borrowing capacity, and then that makes it really hard for this person that's been so invested in studying and getting a degree to go start a job and then go, oh, now I'm going to start saving for a house. So it's really about working
the balance,
out the balance for that. I'm not sure how to do that myself for every individual, because every individual's circumstances are different, whether they can live at home and their parents help them pay HECS, or they work and pay their HECS during the period of working. But it does make it quite difficult. But there is people out there that seem to manage to save and do that. So I don't know. I think it's down to personal preference of what you do want and what you don't want.
So you heard it here first. Going to uni is a bad idea. Is that from Ash? No. That's not what we said. That's a debate for another.
It's a debate for another topic. But it's definitely something that I find is a hindrance for a lot of people when they're trying to get into their first home. If they haven't paid some of their HECS off during study, or they've got a very big HECS debt because they've done, a master's or something, that can be quite difficult for when they first get out into their real job, as they would call it.
All right. So moving on, the next question is, how long does it take to make an offer? You've got a really exciting place. You've seen the home of your dreams. You've walked through an open home. And you're like, I want to make an offer, but I'm not sure if it's actually going to stick. Is it what? Yeah. How do we answer that question?
So get a pre-approval and see myself, the broker, first. And that's when you can actually make an offer and that it's going to follow through.
Gotcha.
So I would say to everyone out there, talk to myself and get a pre-approval, and then you can go making offers that day if you like that house. You can say to the agent, I want to make an offer. You can do the process of that, which is obviously putting it in writing and talking to the agent, and then they will negotiate with the vendor for you. And that's basically where Peter kind of takes over that situation where you're negotiating with the agent and you're making the offer, and then the offer comes back, obviously, and you may negotiate a few times with Peter depending on the vendor and the price that you're willing to offer for that property. And then we get an offer accepted, and then Peter does her due diligence and will ask for information, and I do my due diligence and get a bank valuation for you.
So my next question is, I get it all the time. A lot of people will find or will have pre-approval and will be holding off because they think it's not the right time to buy. So I know that, in my opinion, it's time in the market, not timing the market. So the longer you own a property, the better. Can you tell me what you think is now a good time to buy?
Yes, right now, when you're ready and you have your pre-approval, make a purchase. That's when we can get you quickly into a property. And I think if you find something that you love, don't hold off and procrastinate. Procrastination sometimes means you miss out. And
agreed.
also, I think from a pre-approval stance, it lasts for 90 days. But if it's after 30 days, generally the bank wants updated pay slips and updated bank statements. So also you're needing to supply us with more information. But if you are ready to go and you find something, make an offer. Do it right away because you don't want to miss out.
Yeah.
I have a question, actually. So whenever I've bought a house, it's always been, oh, you don't need a pre-approval because you've got it sorted. So can you tell me why brokers have told me that, but pre-approval is important?
So I think they do a pre-assessment, which sometimes they just look at the figures and they go, oh yeah, you can afford that. But a bank looks through all of your bank statements and goes through policy. I really like my clients to have a verified pre-approval so that I'm not wasting the agent's time or the vendor's time. And also, if something goes wrong in that process, it doesn't only make me look bad in the whole process, it also makes that client feel horrible and it's an absolute terrible transaction. And if they're buying their first house or they're buying their second house and they're transitioning from their first house, it is so stressful.
Yep.
And you just add so much more stress to them because now they don't know whether they're going to get the money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good.
And it takes longer because also they haven't been verified. They haven't gone through the process. They may not have provided all the documentation to the broker. And that might end up taking 10 to 5 days for that person, if they're not organised or tech savvy, to get you all the information. And then that means your vendor gets frustrated because they haven't exchanged, the deposit hasn't been paid. And that ultimately leads to the deal falling over or everyone being super stressed, and then potentially you miss out again.
Yeah, especially if, is someone who has their pre-approval already comes through and wants to make an offer. It can be heartbreaking. So that's really good advice. Get your pre-approval first, guys.
And I must say, some banks don't do pre-approvals, but if you come to myself, we do a full assessment of your financial position before we send you out into the market. And we will tell you, okay, this bank does not do pre-approvals, but we have reviewed it, and on the calculator and in your bank statements and through your financial position, there is nothing that I can see. And we do check your credit score as well, which doesn't impact your credit score, but we check it to make sure that there's nothing on there that's going to impact the lender. And a lot of lenders have credit score rates, which means that if you have a score less than, say, 750, you might not fit their profile. There's other lenders that might take down to 450. And that means obviously they're willing to take more risk, because the lower your credit score is, the worse it is. The higher your credit score is the better.
Gotcha.
So some banks have that criteria as well. So it's really best to have a broker do the investigation and work out that you can actually go make that offer and be backed with guarantee that you're going to get that property.
Yeah.
And not miss out, and then not be stressed and not have fear of the unknown.
So the broker has pretty much said go, broker being you, has said go. How do I make an offer? Peter, that's a question to you. How do we actually make an offer to know that we're going to get this property?
Yeah, so there's heaps of ways that you can negotiate. My best advice to all buyers, especially if you're in a competitive market where there are a lot of different buyers around, is make your best offer. Now, Ash might be giving you a different advice, of course, but your terms want to be good. So you say, yes, I have pre-approval, I have a 10% deposit, I don't need any lengthy settlement, I can match what the vendor wants. So it's not just about money, it's also about terms.
Gotcha.
Because if you're buying a house from a 90-year-old lady and she wants a 3-month settlement and you can wait that time, you're going to be a better buyer that is going to want her to move quickly. So it's about, I guess, finding where you can match the vendors or the sellers' terms the best. And then it comes down to price. and also process. So if you can pay a holding deposit of 0.25%, which is $1,000, $1,500, and you can sign a contract pretty quickly, you can probably secure that property before anyone even looks at it. So
Yeah, gotcha.
that is what I would do, is send the contract to your solicitor, say, can I sign this with a cooling off period, and pay a holding deposit. And then at that stage, you've secured the property. It can't be sold to anyone else, but you still have 5 or 10 business days to cancel and just lose that holding deposit. What do you think, Ash?
I think that you need to get your solicitor to check the contract for anything that may be imposed on that property or in that contract that you may feel uncomfortable with. And that way then the legal requirements of that contract. And also you can then say to myself, the broker, and your agent and the vendor, we're happy to move forward and proceed with the purchase. And then you can move forward with obviously getting valuations and pest and buildings and all of those processes done within that. So, yeah, correct.
Fantastic. So that means that we're kind of up to the stage of negotiation. I think I'll just ask a question. Do we have negotiation power to get the price? Or, like, I grew up from a standpoint that sort of the price is the price and that's what it is. But obviously properties are whatever somebody's willing to pay for it. So what power do I have as a person looking to buy a property to negotiate? And what kind of tactics should I use to negotiate the best deal that's going to win out for us?
So ultimately, when a property has just hit the market, it's going to be hot. There's going to be interest. There's going to be people looking to buy it. But you just come to the market and you go to an open home or an inspection and you say there's a lot of interest, that means that you're probably going to have to put your best offer in to secure that house if you want it. There is other of obvious properties that sit on the market for a little bit longer. You may be able to negotiate with those because it might be that the vendor needs certain terms, or it might just be the agent might have a difficult vendor, or the agent might not be able to reduce the price on the property, or it hasn't met that certain criteria of people, because everyone has a different dream house.
Yes.
And everyone has a different dream style of house as well. So not everybody loves, the country style home or the
urban modern home or whatever. Yeah.
So it really is dependent on yourself a little bit as well, and the property, because just because it's been listed might not mean that it's not going to sell every day or quickly, but it means that it's worth what it's worth and it's for that style of home.
Yeah.
And the agents have to do so much due diligence around the property as well. And we also do so much due diligence around the price as well. So I think it's realistically just about the property.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes when you make an offer, the agent can't get a yes for you.
Yeah, correct.
So what do you do what would you recommend to your buyers? Do they come to you feeling like a bit heartbroken?
Sometimes they do. And, I have to explain to them that there's also the vendor's emotions in this house as well as your emotions. So, and the agent and I are trying to work in the best comparable for you, but also potentially the offer that you've made may offend the vendor because they ultimately think that their house is worth what it's worth.
You're
because
giggling
they
there.
have,
That happens often, does it?
Yeah. That's why agents exist.
Yeah.
because ultimately they believe that their house is worth this and you believe that their house is worth this. So ultimately that can be a little bit of a thing where the agent will come to you and say they just won't negotiate to that price. Sorry, you're going to have to make another offer.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, as a broker and as an agent, we can help make everyone feel comfortable to get to an offer that is acceptable, but you have to be able to be patient. It takes time. It doesn't just happen overnight.
Yeah.
And there has to be reasons for why you negotiate. And I think that's a really big thing, is give people time if they're not willing to accept your offer, unless the agent says to you, no, I have a better offer on the table. Well, then you have to come up, because that means the consumer is willing to pay more.
Yes.
So you need to meet that market.
Yeah. It's also, I guess, when you think about your favorite car and your favorite car, my favorite car, I wouldn't pay a cent for a Ford Mustang.
Yeah.
But if you bring me a Mercedes, I'll pay all the cents. So it's kind of like that. So like Ash said before, what people think about their castle is not what everyone's going to think. And if you can't meet in that
range
in-
of
in
their
the range
expectation.
for that property, then potentially that property is not for you. And as sad as you might be, you have to walk away.
Yes.
But if you can find common ground, so that's what an agent will try and do, and a broker will work on that as well, is to find the common ground. So a lot of the time I'll come back and say, I couldn't get them to accept your $550,000 offer. The asking price is $609,000 for instance. And I say, well, but they're interested to sell it to you because you meet all of these terms, and they'll sell it to you for $580,000. And so I guess a lot of the time when that happens, people will be like, oh, I'll speak to my dad, or I'll speak to,
Such and
my
such, yeah.
cousin. And it's like, well, actually, you just got to think and look inwards. Is this in my budget, and is it what I want? Because we're looking at what did you say it was per annum?
6.4%.
So 6.4%, if you're getting that growth year on year, it's not really about the money. It's about, do you want this or not?
Yeah.
To your point where you said people want to talk to their family and their friends about making an offer on this property, what I'd like to say to them is, please contact your broker and ask them, because we have access to the actual data. And your family and friends are great if you, yes, may need to be gifted some more money, or if you just want their general opinion. But if you can't talk to them for 48 hours, that generally might be too long. And generally, that might mean that someone else has made an offer on that house. So what I say to people is, make sure you have the data before you go talking to other people, because what they think that house, again, is worth, especially mums and dads, they think that what we pay for property now is outrageous. And I think what we pay for property right now is going to be quite conservative to what property could become.
Yeah.
So I think the nervous people, and we are a nervous country when it comes to spending money. Australians are very conservative. I think you have to take the risk.
Yes.
And I think that's something that if your family are very conservative and not risk adverse, then potentially they can make you feel uneasy about the decision that you've made. But obviously, it's your gut instinct that if you want that house, then you should follow through with your gut instinct. And if your broker and your agent are saying these are the facts and these are the stats, well, then I suggest moving forward as quickly as possible.
Yeah, 100%.
If you can get your solicitor, your broker, and your agent all to agree, then
Those are the three opinions that matter, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
no-
your partner sometimes.
Yeah. So all this advice is great, and it's for, I would say, most of the private treaty stuff. Is there any different advice that we need to give for, if you're auctioning, if you're at an auction and trying to buy a property through auction?
Yeah, I think so. An auction is something that is very popular now, but the thing that I say to my clients with an auction is, if you go to this auction and your offer is accepted, there's no cooling off period. There's no, obviously, days of getting pest and building. You are paying your deposit on that day and you're following through with that. So when people go to auction, I always tell them to get the contract of sale reviewed from their conveyancer and solicitor before the auction, to make sure there's nothing in that contract that is going to be an alert to the bank that might say, oh, actually you need a 40% deposit, or you need a 20% deposit and you've only got a 10% deposit. And also so that then the agent has clarification as well that you actually going to follow through with that purchase and they can sell it to you at auction, because it's also not nice for anyone in that transaction if it doesn't go well.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's what I think auctions are a great thing for vendors, and I do like them when my clients have pre-approvals, but sometimes it can be overwhelming for some people, and I do see a lot of people say to me, oh, I'm not going to go to an auction, which that, to me, I ask them why, and a lot of the time they say, oh, because, I'm not sure how I feel about making a bid, because that can be overwhelming too.
100%, yeah.
And I always say to them, like, I've been to a few auctions with my clients, or I've been on the phone with my clients helping them and talking to them, because a lot of the time it's fear of actually raising the paddle or making the bid. It's actually not even the auction, it's the process of what you have to do at the auction.
Some auctions move really fast, others move really slow. The whole environment of it is overwhelming to those that definitely ones that have never done it before.
And I think as well, like, then people know how much you've paid for that property too.
Yeah.
So I think that's also something that people get a little bit nervous about. Everyone in this room or everyone at this property knows how much I'm willing to spend.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that it's coming more of a thing that people are getting comfortable with. But I just think the general nature of humans is it's quite scary to get up there and make a bid.
And it's quite public in
Correct.
a sense of the word.
It's called a public auction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So there you go.
Yeah, it's just something that I think over time it's becoming very popular and people are becoming more comfortable with it. But definitely speak to your broker and the agent about the property before you go to an auction and just make a bid.
Yeah.
An agent will be able to help you as well. So they do act for the seller. But if your concern is, or how do I raise the paddle, or how do I manage the stress, you can actually send someone to bid on your behalf. You can also speak to the agent and get a bit of reading material about how to do it, watch auctions online, and pick up tactics like that. So the agent is actually there to help you because they want you to bid.
Yeah.
So-
And that happens time and time again. Agents I've seen in so many auctions that I've been to is they're always in the ear of this person. It's not necessarily pushing them to one direction. It's also about the advice they give on when's the right time to make that decision, to put your hand up and how high you can go and all that sort of stuff. Because yes, ultimately the agent works for the seller, but they want it sold and they want to help you with that selling capability as well. So we've accepted an offer. A person's willing to take your money. Peter, talk to me. What are all the steps that we need to go through after that happens, and then let's talk through what they all are.
So I think together, Ash and I, we cover a big part of the back end of what happens. So once you've made your offer, you've had the offer accepted, your agent's going to ask you for a heap of details. So your full legal name, your solicitor details, do you have a broker, what kind of settlement terms, what kind of deposit you're going to be paying. So sometimes an agent won't ask all of those questions, but the minimum that they need is your full legal details, your solicitor, and if you don't have one, they can recommend you to someone, and who your broker is. Now, at that stage, you can either fill out the contract, like we talked about a little bit earlier, and provide it signed, ready with a small deposit, or we can go through the slower process, which is what happens if the property is not highly sought after, or if you just need a little bit more time. Now, what that means is you get your solicitor, so you do all your due diligence and your finances without a signed contract. The benefit of that is you haven't spent any money until you get to exchange of contracts. But the risk that you face is that someone else can buy the property from under you.
Yep.
And an agent, unfortunately, we have to take all offers to the vendor. So if we get offers at this stage, it doesn't matter that you had an offer and acceptance. If we get a higher offer, it's going to likely be accepted. So it's not my favourite way of doing it, but it is quite common, especially in Goulburn and Canberra, actually. So we get your full legal details and you're not paying a deposit or anything like that straight away. And we send what's called sales advice. So we notify the broker and we notify both solicitors that it's under offer, they've met, and we tell them the terms. So then the solicitor will prepare a contract and send to your solicitor and your broker. Have I missed anything there, Ash? Anything you want to add?
Realistically, no. It's just obviously why we like to advise that people to pay that holding deposit is so that they don't get outbid, because you legally have to take that offer to the vendor.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where people get really confused, is that you have to take that offer to the vendor if someone comes in at a higher price. So I always try to encourage people to do the deposit so that we have that time.
Yeah, and so this is what, if an agent accepts another offer and doesn't tell you, that's considered gazumping. So people throw that horrible word around all the time. So if an agent has sold a property to someone else, it's gazumping. Well, actually, it's only if they've done it without notifying you. So
for example, if I put an offer in and then someone else puts an offer in that's higher and it's accepted, the agent has to legally come back to me and say...
They don't have to legally.
Right,
But they
okay,
should.
okay.
Ethically,
they should
because
come back.
You're a human and you're investing all this time and resources into this property. But sometimes it happens that buyer, they've got a signed contract, they provide that. So there's not any time.
Yeah.
But yeah, they should always tell you. But if they don't, that's called gazumping. So the agent, even though we work for the seller, we really want to help you. So we don't want it to be sold to anyone else, because that makes it really awkward for us and your broker. So
Yeah.
And I don't think it just makes it awkward. I think as a broker and working with a lot of agents, and most of the time they will want to find the right property for you if this one doesn't match you as well, or if you can't meet the price or the terms for that property. agents have a whole database of properties coming and normally know if you don't get this one, well, if you like this one, there's this one coming.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think they don't ever do these things intentionally. And I think that's where ethically all agents will normally tell you what's going on if you haven't paid that holding deposit and got that holding time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So next step, we have, I've written them down so I can get them. So send sales instructions, and then you have the opportunity at this stage, and that's usually in the first few days, where your broker will organise a bank valuation and we'll get a building and pest. So Ash, do you want to talk us through, I guess, the bank valuation part of this? Yeah.
So the bank valuation can be different depending on each property and depending on deposits for people. So obviously once you've got a pre-approval, we get the contract of sale from yourself and the solicitor or conveyancer, and we submit the property for valuation and we send the contract to the bank to get the formal process moving. And what we actually do is then review the figures and make sure that we might need to reduce the loan by $5,000, or we might need to increase it by 5 or something along those lines. But generally we order the valuation. Now there is things called desktop valuations, which means that it's very quick, it's done instantly, and there's no actual full inspection on the property. Then there is other valuations that are like a curve drive-by valuation, which means the valuer just drives by. Now the valuer
Checks that the property actually is there and exists.
Yes. And for those who don't know what a valuer is, they are a third party that the bank employs to make sure the property is worth what you are purchasing it for. So they verify that it is actually worth the $700,000 that you're paying for that property. And then they do a they do a street valuation, which is a little bit of a bigger report. And then there's a thing called a short form valuation, which is generally for some lenders that may see the property having some heritage listing or something on there, and they might want a full report on it. And then if you go to a rural property, that normally gets a long form valuation. Now the short form and the long form valuation have to be booked in to inspect the property. So these things can take like 3 to 4 days depending on the valuer and depending on their backlog and where they come from. So this is normally where I will always indicate to my agent and the client the valuation has been booked for Thursday.
Yeah.
So then the vendor knows, because the agent knows that it's Thursday, and then we can say to the agent, actually, the valuer has 48 hours to get the report back to us. So we might not get it until Friday.
Yeah.
So we might not get formal approval until Friday afternoon or Monday, depending on the bank.
Gotcha.
So that's...
Yeah, so that delay can be frustrating for some people, but if you have a cooling off period, at that stage your solicitor can ask for it to be extended, or if you haven't signed a contract and that kind of thing, your agent should notify the vendor that this is just normal procedure. Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify with the evaluation process that not every property necessarily needs a full-blown report on it. It's more the type of property determines the type of evaluation that's ultimately get it.
Correct. And it's also the client. So if you have a 20% deposit, there's no lenders, mortgage insurers, and the bank has less risk on them.
Gotcha.
So they normally just are happy with viewing a desktop valuation.
Yep.
Each bank has their own policy around valuations.
Gotcha.
So I like to tell my clients when I talk to them, well, we're getting you a pre-approval with this bank. You will be able to have a desktop valuation. If we need this to move quickly, that's what we would do. If we go with this lender, we're going to need a full valuation. May take up to 5 days if the valuer doesn't get there, or if you make an offer on a Friday and then we have to book it on next week,
Yes.
the valuer might not be available until Tuesday or Wednesday, which
Yeah.
is then time delays.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's
got it.
all really important.
Yeah, I've got a quick question. So with the valuation, because this is one of the hurdles that you have to jump through if you're a buyer, an agent or a broker, what can go wrong here and what should people know?
Okay, so what can go wrong? There's ultimately the time that it takes to get the valuation if they haven't signed the contract and paid your deposit, that can ultimately mean it's fallen over.
Yeah.
Because someone may be a cash buyer or someone might just have the confidence to be buying that property. Secondly, you could come back and there could be things that are it could be a title on the property. So there could be an old title, which means then the boundaries haven't been actually done. And that might mean that there needs to be a report done. And some banks won't actually accept that. So then that can be a problem. And it can also be another thing of the valuer has to go off what their data shows. And they may say that the property is not worth $700, it's worth $680. So then there's a $20,000 difference. In that instance, we ultimately need to talk to the agent and the vendor and the solicitor to work out, is the valuation correct, or I need to review the valuation on the bank, and we normally contact the valuer and work out why they've given that valuation as well.
I've heard that exact scenario happen just out of a property in Bungendore recently, where a builder was ready to go to build on a block of land, and because of the market shift and everything, the developer had an overpriced block of land, and then the bank valued it, and it was like $20K less than what they were paid for, and ultimately the purchasers didn't end up buying it because they just couldn't get to that price point, and the bank just wouldn't lend them enough money to make that happen. So yeah, it's hugely important to make sure that all our I's and T's are crossed to make sure that we...
And this is part of the job that we help you do, and we will help, and the solicitor will help guide through that. There is ways around these things, but it depends on your own financial position and what you feel comfortable with and how much you want that property.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's just one of the hurdles. So should this happen to you, I'm sorry, your broker and your agent and your solicitor can help you through it. So next thing that you're doing, and it can be simultaneous or at the same time as your bank valuation, is you're getting a building and pest inspection. Now, sometimes an agent will provide this. So Pat, you know that I like to provide this all the time. Your broker and your solicitor will recommend you either get your own or you can rely on it. And it all depends on, I guess, how risk averse you are, the information that you have at your hand. In Canberra, they're provided and they're insured. So there's not much to worry about there, but you can still always get your independent one. Now, things that can come up in a building and pest inspection can be things, major things like structural things, termites, a lot of those kind of things, and there can be minor defects.
Yep.
So patch and paint might be required. You might have silicone in a bathroom that needs redoing. So when these things come up, you're going to speak to kind of everyone you know to figure out, well, what does this mean? What does it mean when it says that, there's wood rotting on my weatherboard? So you have to do, this is the important part of it, where you have to, I guess, make up your own mind as to the suitability of the house for you, as well as get other, I guess, advice from builders or your dad if he's a builder, and about what that can cost you. So the important thing here is, can you afford to fix these things, and have you budgeted? So when these things go wrong, if there's something major that come up, you're well in your right to ask for a price reduction.
I was just about to ask that question. Is like, if obviously it's all risk adverse and how much risk you're willing to take, but this also opens back up the negotiation table. I've found something in the pest and building inspection that's not sitting right with me. It's going to cost me a lot of money to fix it. How can we negotiate to get this sold?
It's important to note, though, if you have negotiated $50K off your asking price, and then you get your building and pest inspection, and there's something that comes up and you want to negotiate again, there's going to be swear words that come up.
Yeah.
So I think it's just about being reasonable. But so your agent, they're always going to be, I guess, stressed because we've got to get the bank valuation and we've got to get the building and pest. But after those two things come through and you get your formal loan approval, you should be in a position to say, yes, we're going to go ahead, or no, we're not going to go ahead. And so we're going to cover the next steps as in you are going ahead. But at first, I just want to ask, Ash, anything to add on the building and pest inspection?
I think the building and pest inspection is a really great thing that gets done, and I love it when the agents have them done, and especially in Canberra, they're already done for you. Mm-hmm. But what I also think is, if you are not a tradesperson and you have no idea about pest and building inspections, don't be a tradesperson. Ring one or ask the person that's done the report, what do we do to amend this? Or what's the level of extent that this is going to impact the home?
Yeah.
And I really think that that's something that people get really wrong.
Yes.
Is they don't understand the report and they just freak out because it might say there's condensation coming from a gutter, and it might just be that the gutter has not got the right nails or the strap on it to hold it to the roof, and that it looks bad.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think a pest and building inspection is great, but they can only go into so much depth. They're not going to write about, the silicon just needs to be redone.
Yeah, because they have to word it for their insurance as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that I see them all the time. Peter would see them all the time. Someone that's in the property market all the time would understand that. If your uncle or your best mate or someone's in the building trade, potentially ask them if you don't understand what that means.
I think ultimately, just to wrap this one up, like I've had it myself. When I was first in buying my first property, you're also stuck in the excitement of it. You're observing everything as you walk in an open home as if like it's just this dream home that you want to walk into. It's not until either you become a lot more observant after you've bought the property, but also for me being in the industry a little longer, you start to see things that aren't necessarily what you would have saw on the first way through. So making sure in this time of great emotion and great excitement that you get it checked by the professionals to make sure that there isn't any huge cost or hidden things that you may have not been privy to, because you're a homeowner, not a pest and building inspector, right?
Correct. And this is why I love it when agents let the buyers go through properties 3 or 4 times, because it means that they're going to pick up things that they may not have picked up, but also it means that then they're not coming back to us at settlement saying that property wasn't like that.
It's good that no one gets surprised. So everyone should know exactly what they're buying. And, you know, people say, well, I spend more time when I buy a car in the car. It's like, yes, you do. You should definitely ask for a second inspection. And before you get to, I guess, the exchange of contracts, you're going to have what's called a pre-exchange inspection. So after your building and pest inspection, your bank val, and your formal loan approval comes through, you do one final inspection before everything happens. And Ash, do you want to provide us on what information you give your clients at this stage? What to look for?
I go and I tell them to check again the house, check the appliances, check the blinds, and check things that are just general things that you might not have checked previously.
The oven.
Oven, opening doors and cupboards, like the simple stuff, right?
Yeah, and the simple thing like shower screens as well. I know that sounds silly, but just things that air conditioners, fans, anything electrical kind of within the house is a really big thing. Also, I do tell them to turn the oven on first, because I have had a few people buy a house and the oven works for the first 15 minutes and then turns off.
Wow.
I do it when I get to the house ahead of it,
So I do recommend, as soon as you walk into that house, turn the oven on and make sure it actually doesn't get to a temperature and just cut out, because sometimes when they're a bit faulty,
That's a good tip. That's a really good tip.
So when I turn up ahead of the inspection, I turn the oven on for them and the aircon. If there's anything that I know they're going to test, I'm just like, so you know this is all working.
Yeah, so they're just like tips that I recommend. Roller doors on garages.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big thing, because people don't check them.
Yeah.
And if, like, it doesn't have a button and you haven't checked that it goes up and down, well, the rollers might not work anymore, and you might not be getting your stuff in that garage when you move in.
It's also the cost. But it's important to note at this stage, if things do come up that are wrong, you can't always ask for them to be repaired. Sometimes it's just for you to know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of almost too late, but it's good to note it down as a final handover inspection sort of thing.
Correct. Yeah. If there's something major that comes up, like for instance, if the oven stops working, well, you're buying a house that really should have an oven that works.
Yeah.
But also, if you're not buying a brand new house, you have to expect that some things are going to be a little bit
And may
used.
work.
Yeah.
And I think we won't go into, but there is a different level of detail you look at when you're looking at going into your brand new home.
Yeah, pay the experts for that.
Pay the experts for that,
Yeah.
Well, we'll go into that later. So now it's up to the deposit. Let's talk about the deposit process. What happens there, Ash?
Okay, so normally once the valuation has been completed, we've got the formal approval from the bank. That's when we say to you, you have unconditional approval or formal approval. We normally send the email to yourself and an email to your solicitor, and we normally then tell you to advise the agent that it's gone unconditional. And then generally within 48 hours of that, I've contacted the agent and said, client has gone unconditional, just letting you know. And then ultimately, then you pay your deposit into their trust account. So it's normally a 10% deposit. Sometimes you can negotiate if you don't have a 10% deposit and you may pay a 5% deposit, but that will be negotiated prior to that. And there's also another thing called a deposit bond, which may mean that you are using a bond which you pay a fee for that guarantees that 5% or the 10% deposit is coming at settlement at the loan.
Gotcha.
And we organise that, or the solicitor organises that for you.
And then just because I think it's also a really good topic for those young who may not know about it, mortgage insurance, what is that and why is it important, let's talk about it.
Okay, so mortgage insurance is a risk for taking a loan over 80%. It's a fee. So it actually gets capitalised onto your loan and you pay it based on your LVR, which is loan versus value of the property. So if you have an 80% loan ratio, you don't pay lender's mortgage insurance. If you have 85% loan, you will pay it. If you borrow up to 95%, you will actually have lender's mortgage insurance at a higher rate because it's capped at what the amount is of your LVR.
Gotcha.
Also, at the moment, first home buyers are very lucky. There is the Home Buyers First Regional Scheme, which allows you not to pay lender's mortgage insurance, but only still have a 5 or 2% deposit if you're a single parent.
That's
Is that
awesome.
in Goulburn?
Yes.
Everyone should move to Goulburn.
Yeah.
Call me.
So I think definitely there's lots of ways around lender's mortgage insurance. If you have a guarantor, you generally don't pay lender's mortgage insurance as well. But ultimately, the fee for paying the lender's mortgage insurance will outweigh what you would pay in a year's rent.
Yeah.
So that's how I normally try to put it to people is, yes, it's a fee. You have to pay it. It's a risk fee for the bank. You're never going to get that money back, but ultimately you're going to get that money back in the value of the growth of the property eventually.
Yeah.
So well said.
So next up is exchange, and I think we'll talk about sold sticker and the champagne. So boring stuff first, exchange. That's the final part of the process. What's involved, and is there anything else I need to watch out for in the exchange process?
So exchange is pretty simple if you've got it all done right. It's pretty much the deposit is paid and the money's transferred.
And the solicitors switch over the contracts.
And then we're done. There you go. And now we can
champagne.
celebrate.
Exchange is actually really exciting time for me, and it's normally exciting time for you because it's yours.
Yeah.
You're buying it. It's exciting time for the agent and the vendor. Everyone's so happy. And from exchange, generally, then how many days until that you're moving into that house as well. So that's basically what exchange means is from that day on your contract.
30, 60, 90-day settlement from the exchange date.
Yeah. So that's this super exciting, ecstatic time. I really enjoy the exchange day because that means it's actually happening for the client. They're super excited.
And then what does it mean for you, Peter, about the standing in front of the sign, taking selfies and all that sort of
I don't take selfies. I take photos of the people that are buying or selling the house. It's not about me. It's about them. So we don't usually pop champagne because, we don't need to drink alcohol every day. But definitely, you'll get a gift if your agent's a nice agent, and you'll get to put the sold sticker on the signboard, and we'll mark it as sold. And you basically just celebrate. You bought a house. Congratulations. Everyone can just come and relax now.
Well, guys, this has been an awesome episode. There has been so much really good stuff on the mortgage part of it. Ash, where can we find out more information about you, and what information have you got for us that is helpful?
So if you contact Panache Financial, we have a webpage. We have TikTok, we have all the apps under the sun. There's links to my calendar. There's links to all of the data and also all of the booklets that we have online for first home buyers buying an investment property, buying your next property, buying a rural property. And there's also a Calendly link directly to my calendar. So you can book in and contact me, and we can talk about how you're going to make the next move, or if you want to buy a farm, or if you just want to buy your first home, and the team and I will help you.
There's one last question I want to ask is, how much does it cost to use a mortgage broker?
We are free, and that is one of my most common questions. How much is this going to cost me? And I'm like, I'm free. I get paid from the lender. So they pay us a commission based on the loan amount, and they also pay us a trail commission for the life of the loan. So this is why we like to make an ongoing relationship, and this is why we have our team who generally look after your mortgage and help you with any questions. And I normally do a 12-month review with my clients, and we also do rate reviews so that we can try and get you discounts on your home loans if it's not fixed, so that we have a regular ongoing relationship. And you may want to buy a car, you may want to upgrade your house, you know, or you may do renos, and we help all with that whole process.
Honestly, a mortgage broker is your best friend. I discovered them quite early in my home buying journey, and when you realize that they're free and they're just here to help you, there is so many things and questions. You end up becoming good friends with them because they can help you so much in your life goals and things there. Peter, is any other closing comments from you?
No, I just want to say thanks, Ash, for joining us. It's been super helpful, and I'm sure we have lots of buyers who are going to call you all the time now.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's actually nice to talk about what I actually do and help people. Like, we love helping people and making the transition easy, and also understanding it for yourself, not from everybody else's perspective that has kind of no idea, but just an opinion.
Yeah, awesome. I'm Pat, that's Peter, and thank you again, Ash. We will see you on the next episode.